This week, consequences go hand in glove with last week's warnings, just as surely as sin has its troublesome results. The prophet Samuel warned that a king for Israel could mean trouble. The people could forget that God was their leader, enter into foreign alliances, worship pagan gods, and violate the commandments. Trouble was sure to follow. The period of the kings of the unified kingdoms, the three kings, Saul, David, Solomon, lasted only a century, from 1020 BC until 922 BC. No one can forget reading the scriptures about King David's adultery with Bathsheba. We're amazed that Solomon, for political reasons, I think, had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Many of these were foreigners who worshiped their pagan gods and didn't even believe in the Hebrew laws. So when King Solomon died, his son very foolishly divided the kingdom. Then the prophets began to scream mightily, and their forecasts came to pass. Against the warnings of Isaiah, the northern kingdom, Israel, with its capital in Samaria, entered into all sorts of foreign alliances. Then the Syrians came crashing down on them in 722 BC, and many people were taken into slavery. Then Assyria sent thousands of people into the land of Israel. They intermarried. They couldn't worship in Jerusalem. So by the time of Jesus, they were called Samaritans, half-breeds, pagan, Gentile Jews. They were so hated by the Judean Jews that by the time of Jesus, if a shadow of a Samaritan fell on a Judean Jew, he or she would go home and take a bath. If a Jew saw a footprint of a Samaritan in the mud in Jesus' day, they would put straw in the footprint and then set fire to it. Whew! Well, in the southern kingdom, Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital and the location of the temple, the prophets pleaded for obedience to the holy laws. Judah escaped Assyria, but because they began playing political games, worshiping fertility gods, because of the sins of their kings, the prophets' warnings came true. Babylon, under King Nebuchadnezzar, even mightier than Assyria, came crashing down on them. The Babylonians destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, carried off tens of thousands of leaders, scholars, upper-class people into slavery, into King Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon in 586, 587 BC. Well, if you were a prophet and you were speaking to your nation today, what would you say? What warnings about money would you give? Remember, consequences. What warnings about sex would you give? Remember, consequences. What warnings about honoring the Sabbath would you give? What warnings about foreign dependencies and military alliances would you give? The prophets warned that sin has consequences. And in ancient Judah and Israel, the consequences came to pass.